I think a lot of people hold back. I think people listening on this podcast know the benefit of owning real estate, myself included, right? We know that historically housing prices go up no matter ups and downs in the market. Even in the downturns in '08, like if you look at a 30-year run or 40, they're always going up. I can't remember the numbers, but statistically, they're always going up as long as you're, willing to even survive that crash a little bit. But we're all worried about the what ifs, myself included. So.
Welcome to The Growth Mindset, the podcast for ambitious real estate and mortgage professionals. Hosted by Adam Crosley and Rick Riddle, this show dives into entrepreneurial strategies, sales techniques, and mindset hacks designed to fuel your career growth. Get ready to learn from top producers, gain actionable insights, and start your journey towards success. Here's your hosts, Adam and Rick.
Welcome to another episode of the Growth Mindset Podcast.
I'm Rick Riddle, and he's
Adam Crosley.
Adam Crosley. So good to see you, my friend. We are on opposite sides of the earth today. Not opposite, but up and down, north and south, probably
right? Yeah.
1,800 miles away. So I am sitting in sunny
New York
Florida.
And South Florida.
Yeah. So I'm excited about today's podcast. I think we have a good one for you guys. This is we're taking a little break from the norm, as Will Smith would say, break from the monotony. And we are I'm gonna interview Adam. I think this is so prevalent to the growth mindset. I know we talk a lot of times about sales and leadership and growing and building a team and all the different things we've talked about in the growth mindset, mostly as it relates to real estate sales. We've had a couple of real estate professionals on and mortgage people, but I want to talk about you.
Thanks, brother.
I'm going to jam on you for a little bit, not in a weird way, but a little known fact, and if you've read the bios on our webpage, Adam is a real estate investor, has 50 rental properties. Is that correct? Or 50 rental units?
43.
43. I rounded
43
up.
43 and then 2 Airbnbs.
That's 50.
Yeah.
That's 50 in the world of the podcast world. So 45, 50. But so I am not I own a couple properties, but I don't have them as investment properties. So, I mean, you're looking to grow and build wealth.
Yep.
If you're in the business that most of our listeners is real estate and mortgage, and I think we all have a belief and that wealth is built on real estate, and we believe that home ownership is the greatest way to build wealth. I say that every time to first-time home buyers, and I really believe it. Right? I believe that the houses that I built or not built, the houses I am in I never would have been able to save the money for down payment if it wasn't rolling it over and rolling it over and rolling over a couple times. So, so I'm in awe of you. Adam is, what are you, 28?
I will be 40 in a couple weeks.
All right. You have more properties than your age.
More units, yeah, I do.
More units. So I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes kind of interviewing you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
You're my co-host and guest.
Oh, look at this. Look at this.
So I guess my first question is tell me about the story of your first one. Like, how did you get into it? Like, what was how did that happen?
So I guess I'll even rewind it a little bit further than that. Like at a young, I got into mortgages because I was up in Alaska. I was running dogs. I was doing that kind of stuff. And I came back to my hometown, but I had a lot of free time when I was up north. And I bought a lot of books like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just a lot of real estate investing books. And it was something that I really wanted to do in life, was become a real estate investor. And I wasn't really sure how to do that or what. So I think like any, early 20 kid, so I was going to actually become a real estate agent. And this was the 2008 is when this was. And I was studying to become a realtor in my community. And during that time, rural area, Northern New York, half of the mortgage guys got out. They just quit in literally a 2-month period. And I remember the broker I was talking to, I asked him, I was like, do you think that people are going to start paying cash for houses? And you know what he thought about it? And he said, I just don't see people starting to pay cash for houses. I just don't think that'll happen in America. And I literally pivoted and I got into mortgages then in October of 2008. And fast forward, it was less than 2 years. I was writing a loan. It was one of my first clients. And we were under contract. Everything was going well. And we get the title back. And they had a power of attorney for mom. The sellers did. They had bought the house from mom, and mom had a life lease on the property. Well, to save a couple of dollars, they did like some online power of attorney, and it wasn't legitimate. So mom either needed to get better or die, unfortunately, for them to have clear title to the house. So the deal falls apart. A week after the deal falls apart, and I'm in my early 20s, I approach the seller and I say, with the agent, and I said, hey, same terms as the deal before. If they own the property free and clear, I was like, I'll give you the same down payment, same interest. You build literally the same deal. If you act as the bank, because we're in northern New York and they had already moved to South Carolina and they weren't really sure what to do and they were in a little bit of a pickle. I said, I'll buy the house under the same terms, but you be the bank instead of me going out to get a mortgage. And they accepted it. So we amortized it for 30 years with a 10-year balloon. And I moved into my first house when I was 22, 23 years old. And that's how I bought my first one. And that one was a duplex. It was I say it's a duplex. It was a big house and they had converted the garage. It was a 1-car attached garage with a thing. And that's where mom lived. And so it was like an ADU, but I got rid of the door in between, and then I rented both of them out, one to ourselves and then one to somebody else. And then, I pretended my rent was, I don't remember what it was at the time, like $900 or $1,000. And so I put money into a bank account, the tenant put money into that bank account, and that built. And then I picked up a property at a foreclosure auction for, it wasn't a lot, maybe 35 grand. And I built that and did some work to it. And then I just bought a property on terms. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll sell a property on terms as well. Because
when you say on terms,
creative finance, without
seller held financing or something like that. Okay.
I bought this property cash. Yeah. So I was like, I'll see if I could sell it on terms. Well, I found out not everybody has the same level of integrity as I did. And I got really screwed. And it was. So
let's do I wanted to, because that was one of my next questions is I think a lot of people hold back. I think people listening on this podcast know the benefit of owning real estate, myself included, right? We know that historically housing prices go up no matter ups and downs in the market. Even in the downturns in 2008, like if you look at a 30-year run or 40, they're always going up. I can't remember the numbers, but statistically, they're always going up as long as you're, willing to even survive that crash a little bit. But we're all worried about the what ifs, myself included. So talk to me. So you bought the house. Tell us the story of the one you feel like you got screwed or crashed and burned.
So bought that house so this was a flip property.
Yep.
Bought it for, let's say 35 grand. I don't remember exactly what it was. This was 2009 or 10, something like that. And bought that property, put probably another 10 into it, sold it for 90 grand. Guy gave me like 7 grand down, and we agreed upon a monthly payment, and that payment was going right into my pocket.
So like a seller held financing, because you owned it free and clear.
Because I owned it free and clear, so that's what I did. Everything went awesome for about 4 months. And he had moved in with his fiance, whatever. She's pregnant. Well, the week before they go to have the baby, she says it's not yours.
It's Adam's.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
And the
I
kid
was like,
goes
wow,
off the deep end.
that would be a great story. We
Oh, that
got a
would be a
million
great story.
viewers on this cover.
So
All right.
anyway, the kid goes off the deep end, gets into drugs, wicked, gets, whatever, and he's, just starts to get behind. And I feel terrible for the guy. Like I can't even imagine what would happen if that happened to me. And, I've got over the, couple decades that I've been an investor, I've gotten a lot more stern and, because every time I'm nice, I get screwed. But,
There's a lesson there, right? It is
yeah,
a
there is,
business,
exactly. Yeah.
right?
And
I
it's
mean,
still like I got burned a couple months ago because I was nice. And
yeah,
it's hard for me. And one of the things I've found is as I built my business, it's a separate story. I've had to, hire other people to help because I'm too nice, and you have to be more stern as an agent,
yeah.
as a landlord. And anyway,
So
this,
he stopped paying, I guess, or did he stop?
so hey, we're going to go through the whole eviction process. He says, don't worry about it. I'm going to jail. And I literally go in to check back the day before he goes to jail. I'm literally walk in, right? There's bodies I'm stepping over. It looks like an opium den in this place. And this property that I had just bought and spent, 15 grand fixing up and everything else, it's completely destroyed. Anyway, he goes to jail. We go into the property and there's two dogs locked on a porch, like 6 inches of dog shit out there. And just the whole property is destroyed. I put another 25, 30 grand into it and a whole summer's worth of work myself because I was cash poor at the time. And then I found a buyer and I sold it for about 100 grand. And then I took that and then I rolled that into a different building. You got a question?
So it's interesting. Bought it for 35, 15, you're in it for 50.
I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't lose money on the deal, but I didn't make as much as I could have if I just sold it initially.
Yeah.
So my capital gain wasn't very large, but I still walked out of the deal with 25, 30 grand, something like that. And I used that cash as a down payment on my next property.
And your next property was?
It was a row building in our downtown Plattsburgh area. And
A what building?
A row building. So like one of the old
like a row home
buildings. Yep. A little alley out back. And
residential or commercial?
Both, mixed use.
Okay.
So there's 2 storefronts, and then previously it had been a furniture store, the guy that I bought it from. So it was a big building. It was like 13,000 square feet. And he had started to subdivide it, but hadn't done a ton. So there was two storefronts and 2 apartments upstairs. But it was a big building. I mean, it was set. You could have 4 apartments and 5 storefronts. The way that it was set up. So I finished the garage. There was a little garage out back. I rented that out to a contractor. I actually put the board of realtors in the back of that office. So if you wanted to become a real estate agent in my county, you had to come to my mortgage office to register to. So I thought that was a cool idea.
I think that's a great idea. So, and how did you finance that deal? Was it a commercial?
So that
finance?
one I went to a traditional bank. I went to a traditional commercial bank, and they normally it's 20% down. There was a small loan that they had like forget what it was, but it was some loan with the city or something like that. Like
an SBA type
loan, like a downtown improvement type loan or whatever. And that loan worked out to be like 12%. So I only had to put 8% down. I assumed this mortgage from the city and I put if that was 12%, I put 8% down and then the bank did 80%.
Okay. So it's interesting. So I know many investors think about residential rental properties, single families, 2 families. I know is a big hit, right? Because and I think we all know and none of us hopefully are in compliance that are listening to this, but I know a lot of people buy 2 family, do it FHA, live in it for a year, which is perfectly legal. At the end of the year, now it's your rental property, right? As you move to a single family, which is a great way to buy property, right? 3.5% down. but I know a lot of your properties are unique, right? I know you own obviously the strip mall that your office is in. I know you own a fraternity house.
I like bigger buildings.
Yeah.
Primarily the reason why a couple of different reasons. So let's say you've got a duplex. I live in New York. New York is one of the most tenant-friendly states in the union.
Mm-hmm.
So it can take 4 months to have a tenant fully evicted from the time they stop paying to the time that court makes them leave. Now, if I've got a duplex and I have a tenant that takes 4 months to get out the door, I'm probably not paying the mortgage with one tenant.
By the way, that's a fear that every single, myself included, a duplex, an Airbnb, all those different types of things everything's great when you do it.
Everything's great when it's great, right? But when it's not, right? So the reason I like bigger units, this strip mall has 14 revenue streams on it. So right now I've got one vacancy that's 23% of the plaza. The building still cash flows. I've got a new tenant coming in there next month, but still, it's still cash flows. I've got one of my buildings is a 10-unit apartment building. If you have 3 vacancy, like it's about 6 is what the break even is. So if I have a few vacancies all at once, 1 or 2 vacancies, I don't even notice. If you've got, a fourplex and you lose 1, you're probably gonna still cash flow.
So can we talk about those two? Can we talk about the strip mall that you're in now, and then the 10? Because I think that's interesting, right? Because most of our listeners are mortgage people, right? So we know the guidelines of Fannie Freddie. We probably even know some DSCR guidelines, and we know, probably the 1 to 4 unit resi properties, right?
Yep.
We know.
And the first thing I'll say is that building downtown, and if you are in mortgage and you happen to be a P&L manager, if you're gonna be in business, in the mortgage business, and you're gonna rent a space, you might as well rent a space from yourself, was kind of my initial thought. Because 1, I control the rent. But 2, that's money that's going away. For me, like when my rent is being paid through my P&L, it's building wealth for me personally. It's like a different way to look at like a 401k.
Yeah. So the 10 unit, right? At one point you had your mortgage office in there. Now we have it in this unit.
No, a different building. That was the other building downtown.
Okay. So the 10 unit building, how did you finance it? Maybe if you don't mind sharing the numbers.
10-unit building I bought for $1 million. I put $100,000 down. I actually cashed that out for my 401k. Paid the taxes on it, and it's a whole different story. But put $100,000 down for my 401k. I got the seller to hold 10%. I got a bank note for 80%.
Wow. And with those type of deals, right? So a commercial finance, a local bank, right? That specializes obviously in commercial finance, and probably a local specializes in your local market, right?
Yeah, that was a little local credit union that I bought that with.
Yeah. And then from terms of document, it's similar to a DSCR, right? You just show that it cash flows.
Yeah. Does the building cash flow? If it does, then they don't look at anything. They don't look at you at all, pretty much.
Yeah. And obviously it did, right? Because you said 10 units and 6 break even, which is phenomenal. How about
that building actually it's near the college. It's not quite, and the previous tenant, the previous owner, it had been on the market for a while. It was on the market for $1 million, and he was renting out to college students, and there's 10 3-bedroom apartments. He was getting $3,000 a semester per door, per student. So there's 30 students in that building, 3 in each apartment, 10 apartments at $3,000 a semester, 2 semesters in the year, gross revenue of $180,000. In our area, it's about, for a 3-bedroom apartment, it's $1,500. Well, the reason he couldn't sell it is because the DSCR calculation wasn't working because he only had the building 40% rented at a 60% vacancy rate. Because during COVID and everything else, there was a lot of issues with just students. Students went down. So I just kind of sharpened my pencil and I'm like, well, 15 units, 15 times 10, that's 15,000 a month. 15,000 times 12 is 180,000 a year. It's the same gross revenue dealing with 10 families versus 30 students. And in my personal opinion, because I own another college building, families are way easier on your property than college kids are.
That's right.
And it's a pain in the butt to move 30 kids in one weekend and 30 kids out this one weekend. So I have moved that entire building into long-term rentals from college rentals.
That's cool. That's it. So, all right, now, what is the most unique property you've ever owned or that you own currently?
The most unique.
I mean, are they all? I mean, didn't it, and maybe I'm setting up this question because maybe I know the answer to or in my mind, don't you own or you've looked at mobile home slabs?
I almost bought a trailer park once, but I didn't pull the trigger on it.
Okay.
I almost bought a 60-unit trailer park once. And I was 3/4 of the way negotiating that deal. We'd verbally agreed to a deal. And then when it came time to sign the deal, the numbers weren't quite as attractive as the pro forma that was put out.
Gotcha.
And the one thing that I found in the bigger commercial stuff is you really need to double check the numbers. You really need to make sure everything is as they say it is. And
so that's a great. So how?
Yeah.
Like
well, it
how?
depends, right? I mean, like it's a lot of checking. Like that one was, I just started walking around and just being a friendly guy. I started talking to tenants. And hey, I'm looking at buying this, what's good, what's bad. And I've found that like talking to tenants is often the best reference check there is because they either love their landlord or they hate their landlord is usually the, and everybody's either really sad to see him go. And those are the properties you typically want to buy. When I find that, I bought properties and I just closed on a 9 apartments right around Thanksgiving that everybody hated the landlord. And we've gotten in there, but the reason everybody hates the landlord is because they're usually not a great landlord. And from a maintenance perspective, there's a lot of the amount of stupid things we've seen in the last 60 days is quite a lot.
Yeah. So, are there properties that you would, because I know one that you own your fraternity house, which like that's a fun story, and maybe we'll use that for another day, or maybe we can include that. What are there things that you would to our listeners who have dabbled, let's say they've owned a 2-family before, they've owned, they've rented out the house they bought when they moved up, right? They didn't sell it, right? I think that's a typical, maybe they ventured into, owning a 3-family or 4-family. What would be your advice to them or what to look out for, I guess?
Well, knowing that the average person listening to this has experience in real estate or mortgage. I'm almost, honestly, I guess I never really thought about it until, talking about this, Rick, but almost every single deal I've done has been a little untraditional. And I think that there's a lot of properties out there, wherever you are, where maybe it's been on the market for 6 months, maybe it's been on the market for a year. And if you can find a way to help the seller, because obviously the seller wants to sell, but it usually is because there's something wrong with the property or there's some piece there. And if you can get creative and bridge that little gap, the reason why most people don't buy properties, there's a lot of reasons, but I think one of the main reasons, just in people that I talk to that want to get into investing, traditionally, if you go very traditional financing, unless you're a first timer and you're going to live in the unit initially, you need a lot of cash. And I think that is the biggest deterrent to purchasing more investment real estate. Talking this and hearing it out, creative finance is okay as long as you understand finance. And I would say our average listener probably does understand finance. And I think that if you can take your skill set and find a solution for the seller, see yourself as a seller consultant, then there's a lot of different ways that you can bridge the gap. Maybe get them to hold that, or maybe there's something that you can do to work on the deal, or maybe it won't be, maybe like no bank will touch it because of XYZ. Well, there's different ways that you can structure things so that the banks are cool with it and the sellers are cool with it, and it's still a good deal for you.
Mm-hmm. That's so, it's so interesting, right? And I think about, I don't know if I'm an average listener or above average listener. And this is why I was so excited about this topic, why I actually texted you a couple of weeks ago. Like, I want to interview you about this, because I think it is about the growth mindset, because it actually, I think of growth mindset of sales and building a mortgage company and building people and building this. And I know you do too, right? As a business coach, but your growth mindset in just properties is intriguing to me because it's not something I've done. And I also think of my life as a loan officer and to be, I've not written a loan in a long, long, long time. I mean, friends and family have not been the loan officer. I've been a leader of loan officers. I'm a Fannie Freddie FHA. I know Fannie Freddie FHA, USDA, VA. Non-QM came out. I guess I knew subprime back in the subprime days. But it's so weird because as you talk about it, it's that alternate financing, right, is helping that. I think that's so true, right? Seller held or talking to a local credit union or getting what we think is MFA state bond first time home buyer loans, but you're looking at community reinvestment type programs on the commercial end or on the investment end. And I think that's such a unique, real estate, home purchases, automobile purchases, boat purchases, airplane purchases. I don't own an airplane, full disclosure, is all about financing. It's all about money out of pocket, monthly payment, right? It doesn't really even matter the price. It's the terms of the deal, right? That moved the needle or so I think it's interesting that you say, hey, the seller hasn't sold a property. It's distressed property necessarily, but the longer on the market, there's probably, and the more offbeat it is, the more opportunity,
Well, and sometimes it's like, and I always look for, like, with the growth mindset in mind, like, what's the value add here? Like this strip mall that I was in, there was 2 vacancies. Those 2 vacancies were about 25% of the entire property. It was on the market for 3 years. This location gets 49,000 cars a day. Like, this is just a great piece of dirt. And so I'm looking at it. Well, those 2 units are right next to each other, and they're about 1,500 square feet units. Well, all the tenants that have come in to look at it want something bigger, or they want something smaller. They want like 800 square feet, or they want 3,000 square feet. Well, the owner was very, he was in his late 80s, early 90s, didn't want to do any work. The property needed a paint job. The parking lot needed, just to be seal coated. There was just a lot of little things that needed to be done. So I approached it and I said, well, could I just move in, combine these 2 units? And so I did a cash out refinance of another building, used that as the down payment, used my own cash instead of doing that to make those units together, spent about $100,000, building the unit out for myself. And now this is my office. And I did that when I was 36. And kind of my justification was, this is going to be my office for the next 25 years. And I'm going to pay for it in cash. And then wherever I work, I'm going to collect a rent check from that into for the next my career, basically,
Yeah.
right? So now I've got one of the best buildings in my entire community, and with the most amount of traffic, and so that has helped my mortgage company. That's helped my branch of the mortgage company.
Which I will put a plug in, whether you work for Crown Home Mortgage or, if you ever want to reach out to us and specifically Adam, there are some creative ways if you are a P&L manager to leverage a
Yeah.
profitable situation into real estate property. We do it here at Crown all the time. So if you want to learn more, definitely reach out to us. Click on our website, ask for more information, and no recruiting there, but we'll tell you kind of some of the strategies that we've implemented. Not only you, but a couple members on our team to really leverage that into property ownership, and I think it's awesome. I think it's a great way to do that. One last question, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. And I don't know if this is I don't know the answer to this question. It's more of curiosity. Do you only own or look for properties in your market area, within a driving distance of you, or have you ever thought?
So it's funny you say that. At the beginning of this story, I told you about the property I got burned on. That was about 35 minutes away. I feel the main reason it fell into disrepair was because I wasn't there to watch it. So today, to your point, I only buy things. Here's where I work. Here's where I live. I do this commute all the time. If it's not a short jaunt off that, I don't buy it.
Okay.
Personally.
Yeah.
Because, like, my property manager, perfect example earlier today, the college house. The college kids don't come back for school until this coming weekend. Well, she drove by today and the front door is wide open. Somebody just kicked the door in.
In 9-degree weather, by the way.
9-degree weather, yeah. Like, I'm really glad she just happened to drive by.
Yeah.
So that's another property around the corner and just went up this little side street just to put eyes on it. It's 10 degrees outside and the front door is wide open. Nobody's there. Okay, well, that's a problem and we need to address it.
Yeah. So if you do buy property and not, if you do buy property out of your market area, whatever you define your market area is, distance or travel wise, I guess it would be really important to take into account a good property manager.
Yeah,
and obviously the expense of that, right?
I could do a whole conversation on just management and all the things that I've learned, but that sounds
like we have more material for a future podcast.
We could probably teach a mini series on real estate, on commercial real estate ownership. But but just to summarize and to finalize, don't be scared of big deals. My first 2 comma deal scared me to pieces. But math is math. And I think that a bigger property, now that I've owned them, is actually easier to own. Like, and we'll just use this last example. It's like, do you want to have 1 10-plex or do you want to have 5 duplexes? Well, I personally want one deal. I mean, it's just as easy to structure one deal as it is to structure. I mean, it's almost the same amount of work because it's just the math, right? Than it is to do 5 individual deals. But then you've got 5 sets of roof. You've got 5, I live in the North Country, so we have to plow. I've got 5 driveways to plow versus 1 big parking lot. I've got 1 foundation versus 5 foundations. I've got 5 sets of roof versus 1 roof. It's just easier when everything is on one site. Garbage with that is a dumpster versus a bunch of, toter cans, and it's easier, in my opinion, to own less bigger units.
I think that's great advice. I think it's, you think about it, if you're a firm believer that and it depends obviously on the market, right? But over a certain period of time, if you think that your property is going to go up 10%, well, $300,000 property, that's 30 grand. On $1 million property, it's 100 grand. And if it's DSCRing, or if it's debt, if it's carrying its debt service, right? it doesn't really matter, right? And especially like one thing that you said today that is really interesting to me, right, is you have a single family, right? Like I think there's an Airbnb right across the street from me, it's been vacant for most of the last couple months. Last year, it was full 100% of the time.
Mhm.
If I was at home like last year, I was like, man, I wish I had an Airbnb like that. It is always there's always new tenants in there, right? I see them right across the waterway. But now I'm like, man, I'm glad I don't have that Airbnb. I haven't seen a tenant in there in 3 months, right? And I don't know the story. I don't know if they're, but you're right. Like the larger the property, probably the less headaches. And like you said, you could have 4 out of your 10 units not being occupied, and you're still breaking even. And
Yeah.
I think
Well, and it's being creative too. Like my Airbnb, the reason I bought it wasn't for the Airbnb. That was additional revenue. There's a 24 by 40 garage out back, and I needed a place to run our maintenance department out of.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I bought the property for the garage, the barn out back, and there was a small 800 square foot house that we fixed up, and now we're renting out. So
It's an ancillary benefit. So
and finding other ways to make revenue.
that's part of the growth mindset, right? Is figuring out. It's I guess the biggest takeaway is outside the box.
Yeah.
Right. Go big or go home. Think big, and always think about the next one. Right. I think that's what you've always.
If you guys have any questions or you want to jam on owning real estate, feel free to reach out to me. Shoot me an email. I'm always happy to share and encourage others to do real estate. It's one of the reasons why I'm in mortgage, why I'm in real estate actively, is because I think real estate is literally the best investment. Maybe I'm just a hillbilly, but I like investments that I can touch. And I like, it's simple for me. And I like it. I think people are always going to need a place to live. And I think if you live in a great area that is growing, I think dirt will always be worth more in the future.
Can't make more.
Can't make more. Unless you're in Dubai.
Fair enough. So awesome. Thank you guys all for listening for this episode of The Growth Mindset. I'm Rick Riddle.
Adam Crosley, thank you so much.
My co-partner, and you guys, this was awesome, Adam. Thank you for sharing your story. This was a unique episode, and it was something that I was really excited to hear about. So thank you. Go in peace.
You've been listening to The Growth Mindset, hosted by Adam Crosley and Rick Riddle. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your colleagues. Stay tuned for more actionable insights to fuel your career success. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or opinions of Absolute Home Mortgage Corporation or Crown Home Mortgage. The content is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional advice or an official endorsement by either organization.